Welcome back to Making Finances Sexy with me, Rose Short, aka the Red Queen. I'm a realtor here in the Phoenix Valley, as well as a financial consultant and CEO of Chronicle Luxury. It is my job to help you build multiple income streams, fire your boss, and live your dream life. So come down the rabbit hole with me. And of course, I am joined by the lovely and talented Ms. Jessica Lay.
Hey everybody, you should know me by now. I'm your Rent Rayvon realtor and certified instructor with the company 101 Financial right here in our Valley of the Sun, making it my mission to assist you in moving out of renting and into homeownership, no matter your situation. I'm ready to be your personal finance coach and first-time homebuyer specialist.
What? Awesome. And today you're going to tell us all about credit cards and how to properly use them.
Oh yeah. I remember we talked about this a little bit in the past, and you mentioned that you did not use credit cards like
Yeah,
until
for a long
college.
time I refused to just because I saw the trouble that people got into with them, and I figured if I didn't spend money I didn't have, I could never get in trouble.
Yep. That does sound like a smart move, but unfortunately it's not the way society looks at it or like wants to work.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately you have to have credit for a lot of stuff, and it's annoying, but it's the sad reality.
yep. So just learning to be smart with a credit card and budget properly for having a credit card. It can create a good credit score for you and hopefully not put you in a whole lot of debt.
And you can even use it to get out of debt if you use it properly.
Yes, exactly. That's what we like to teach our students in our 101 financial course, or the 99 course is the very first one. And once we have the finances organized, we teach our students and by throwing in a credit card to really use it and make their money go farther for them.
Awesome.
So let's just get right into it. What is credit? Credit, it measures our ability to repay our debts, and it shows our credit worthiness as well as judges risk factors to lenders of. So if you have good credit, you're considered a low risk consumer. And then if you have a lower credit score, then you're considered a high risk consumer and you have a higher chance of being denied, or if you are approved, you'll most likely get higher interest rates on loans, which nobody wants.
Yeah, it's kind of like we tell people all the time when they ask us what their loan rate would be to buy a house, right? It all depends on your risk position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people like to know kind of right away when they're looking to purchase a home, like how much is my monthly payment going to be? And there's so many variables and so many like like you said, depends on your credit score, depends on your debt to income ratio. There's just a lot of things that can affect a monthly payment on a home loan, or how much credit card limit you get, things like that.
Yeah. So one of the catch-22s of credit is if you don't have credit, it's hard to get a credit card. And if you can't get a credit card, you can't build your credit. So how do you guys usually teach someone in that position how they can start building credit?
So what we like to do, if we have a student that comes to us and just was scared of ever owning a credit card, didn't trust themselves, then we love to check with them and see if there's a family member or a friend, somebody that trusts them enough to actually add them as an authorized user to their credit card. The person that is becoming the authorized user does not need to necessarily use the credit card. You don't even have to send them a card. Just literally tacking them onto your card and you're using the card, and as long as you have good credit as well, that other person can benefit and start there to build a credit history and get to a position where they can apply and get approved for their own credit card.
Now, is that going to hurt the credit card owner's credit, or will it not affect it?
It doesn't affect it.
That's what we love to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, it only like would affect it, I guess, if you're the friend they're trying to help is using their credit card and they don't
Not paying you
know
back.
about it. Yeah.
Gotcha. All
Um,
right. So let's fast forward a little bit. You get the credit card, you're building your credit, and we all know, because we've all been through it, as soon as you get one credit card, all of a sudden, all these credit card companies want to send you a free card and tell you you're pre-approved. So what is the proper procedure when you start getting those? 'Cause I know a lot of people are like, oh, cool, let me just have 10 credit cards. And that's not really a smart move, at least as far as I know. So can you talk us through that a little bit?
yeah, exactly. So we have ran into students that have too many credit cards. So they get like, TJ Maxx or all these department stores, Victoria's Secret, they get you. They're like, here, sign up for this free card and you can use it in store, whatever your credit limit is, and pay us back later. Cool, that sounds great. But the problem is people will tend to overspend. Like they have a limit, they'll spend almost up to that limit, but then they don't really think about how am I going to pay this back? And that's where people kind of dig themselves into holes because they use up their usable amount and their limits of multiple cards, but then they have, even if it's like $20 here payment, $20 here, it adds up. And if you're making all these payments to multiple credit cards, you may not have the funds to actually cover it. And that's how people put themselves in a poor situation. So I definitely recommend creating a budget still, even if you have a credit limit, just stick to whatever you can afford to pay each month to your credit card. And we always want to pay off the statement balance each month, because if you don't, then that's when the interest gets you and you're paying extra and making the banks richer.
Yeah. And you have to be careful with that minimum payment because sometimes some banks have a pay over time plan. So you can, take your big purchases and break it down into monthly so that you're not accumulating interest at all. But you're usually paying an additional fee, and that means that your minimum payment goes up. And if you miss that minimum payment, that's where the credit hit really comes in. So be careful with those.
Yeah, and credit cards are great because they can be used pretty much anywhere that you need to buy things. So the grocery store, some of your bills can be set up to be pulled out of a credit card, um, and you want to, because a lot of credit cards, they can come with rewards like cash back, mileage for traveling, or discounts and things like that. When I started using a credit card smartly, because I wasn't smart in the beginning, I was in a lot of credit card debt when I got out of high school and moved out and stuff.
Makes sense.
So after I learned that I needed to be paying off the statement balance each month and whatnot, I got my first expense credit card was a Hawaii Airlines one, and it was really cool because I was living in Hawaii at the time, and literally all my flights from Hawaii back here to visit friends and family was free, basically, because I got to book it with my credit card points. So there's just like really good benefits you can get from the credit cards on top of stretching your income longer and using
Yeah.
it for other things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and how credit cards work. So the billing cycle is 30 days, but then we get that grace period. It's about 15 to 20 days, and you'll want to pay off the card in full each day before the grace period ends. So the 19th day. Sometimes people are like, oh, I have this extra cash. It's most times not really extra, but they want to just pay off their card and be done with it. But our program, again, we tell our students we want to run to deposit our income and walk to pay our bills. So take advantage of that grace period. You don't need to, because it's not, you are going to pay your card down, but if you do it before the grace period ends, it's not going to count towards that next monthly payment, because that next monthly payment is the next 30-day billing cycle always. So in a way, you're not really helping or hurting yourself if you pay an extra payment to your credit card before that statement balance is due. So just walk to pay your bills.
Yeah, because the last thing you want to do is make that extra payment and then something happens and then you're overdue on the next payment.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of the Citibank cards get white labeled to different companies like Best Buy, Specialized, like a bunch of those. They use Citibank, but a white label version that you can choose if it's a Visa or just for that store specifically. But you have to be careful with those too, because even if you choose the store specific one, we just had it happen with Best Buy. We had a Best Buy one that was specifically for Best Buy. I could not use it anywhere else. And they recently sent me a new card and they were like, hey, your Best Buy card's now an all around Visa. And I was like, great. That's going in the file box and never coming out.
Yeah.
But so be careful. Banks will raise your limits. They'll give you, they'll extend your credit line because they think it's worth it. And just be very careful with that.
Yeah, the banks want our balances to be large so then they can make their money. And we're not taught this. And it took learning kind of the hard way. So when I started really paying attention to my finances and I saw I was paying my credit cards, but I was getting charged more interest than my actual payment. And it sucks. It really sucks to see, and time to make sure that you pay attention and you're doing things correctly just so you can not put yourself in a poor situation.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who get it in their head that once they get a better credit card, they need to cancel their original credit card. And that is never a good idea. Do you want to walk us through why it's not a good idea?
Yeah, it's good to keep credit cards open and use it once in a while, because that'll just solidify like your credit history, as well as closing credit cards yourself can lower your credit score a few points. It's nothing crazy, but we don't really want to intentionally lower our scores. So
Yeah.
if you really don't want to keep the card anymore, just leave it open and the banks will generally close it eventually. If they see that it hasn't been used in a year or 2 years, they'll typically close it and that doesn't affect your score.
Yeah. And even if it's, like I say, your first one, you want to keep that open because one of the biggest factors for credit, right, is the length of credit, which again is funny because if you're young and trying to start, you can't get a credit card, you can't start that credit, you know. And like I think my first line of credit was 7 years ago, and my credit limits or my credit report still says that it's poor because there's not enough history.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have a $500 credit card and then you get a $20,000 credit card 5 years down the road, just keep that $500 one open because it's helping you in the long run.
Yep. And if you're like a young person watching right now, what my parents thankfully did for me was add me as an authorized user when I was 16, 17 years old. And that really helped me out. I got approved for my first credit card right away just because I was grateful to be able to tack on to my parents who had good credit.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I want to touch on the budgeting really quick again.
Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah. So if you're wanting to start using a credit card and say you get approved for a 10,000 credit limit, but you can only afford a 2,000 monthly payment on that card, you'll want to stay within your budget because the interest that is accrued on credit cards is super high. Most cards are now, I've seen like 25, 27%. I don't really see any credit cards lower than that these days, like low interest credit cards, unless it's no, not even the department stores. I feel like I've seen like anything under 21%. It's crazy.
Yeah, they'll usually do 0% for the first year. And that's kind of the nice thing about Best Buy is usually theirs, it would be 0% for whatever month term on what you're buying, which was great. But like my Chase Amazon card was 0% the first year, then after that 23.5%. And it's one of those things that I'm like, oh, I should have like traded up to another free interest credit card before that one had any chance to carry a balance or anything like that. Because that's just a whole nother stressor to be hanging over your head.
Yeah, exactly. And the Kalani kind of does that a lot. He's been applying for new credit cards kind of a lot lately, but this is his strategy. So when he gets a, you can be approved for this in the mail, it has that 0 APR for the first year. He really uses it to his advantage, like with his car sale business, because now he has this 0% APR credit card. He can buy all the parts and things that he needs. And since he knows how to budget and make the proper payments to the credit card, he can pay off the credit card within the year, since it's 0 interest and whatnot. And just that's one of the ways a credit card can be a great tool. Is what I'm trying to explain, but
No, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. So I want your take on this because the I don't know, I guess reaction has been mixed. I find it interesting. So my friend who accidentally started his own car rental business, he has very good credit, like up in the 800s. And so he, has been buying like 2 cars a month to get his business up to where he wants it to be. He got, I think, 3 or 4 0 interest credit cards for about $15,000 each and paid off the cars with them. And now instead of paying a car note with an interest rate, he's paying off the credit cards with no interest rate. And half the community has been like, oh, that's really smart. And the other half has been like, that's really stupid. You don't know what you're doing. And of course, his response is, well, I know how money works. You don't, apparently. So I'm curious what your take on that would be.
yeah, I mean, I agree that he is pretty smart. It's because the banks don't tell us like that you can utilize them this way, because again, they want us to be paying the interest and racking up the cards and all that stuff. But honestly, like when you can, like, we can't beat the banks, but we can technically join them. Like we don't have to work at a bank or anything, but we can just be smart and utilize their tools and resources, but also know when and how much we need to do, like pay to them. And I don't know how to explain.
Yeah, he of course is making money off the cars, so like he's not worried about being able to pay it back, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's where people get confused is because a lot of people will get a credit card to pay off a credit card and like they go through this cycle, but they go through the cycle because they're only paying the minimum payment, whereas he's gonna be paying more than the minimum payment. And so I think that's where the whole like, oh, that's a terrible idea comes from, is they're looking at it as, oh, he's just gonna pay off the minimum, whereas he's looking at it as, I'm just gonna keep paying whatever the original payment was or more, because then I'll pay it off and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Just making bigger payments than a minimum payment definitely is always a smart move. And then paying the statement balance each month if you're just using it as your regular expense credit card.
Uh, so let's say for whatever reason you do carry a balance on in a credit card that is going to accumulate interest. There's a couple things you need to know about interest when it comes to credit card. One, if you've done a cash advance, that is going to be the last thing that gets paid off, no matter what the amount was or what you pay off to that card. If you take a cash advance of $100, you spend $800 on that card, and you pay $800 to that card, you're still going to accumulate interest on that $100 that you took out. It's not going to go away until you completely pay it off. The same principle is true for when you carry a balance. So if you carry a balance of, let's say, $100, let's make it easy, right? And then you spend 400, you pay that 400, that's great, but the interest that accumulates is going to accumulate off of the 100, the original 100. So when you pay your statement, it's paying to the newest expenses, not the oldest expenses. So when you're accruing interest, you're still accruing on the oldest expenses. So you're going to continue to accrue interest until it's 100% paid off. So a lot of people will be like, okay, well, interest on this much is only this, and then it's going to carry, it's going to be fine. But that interest is going to compound, and that's where people get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and that's when we see the balances not really getting smaller each month, and it's frustrating.
Very.
You just feel like weak and powerless because you can't seem to pay it off, and it's just not a good position to be in. But again, budgeting. How much money can you spend and still live?
Yeah.
I think credit cards are sexy.
Agreed.
They're an awesome tool, and I don't want people to feel afraid of them. I just want them to understand them and be smart and use them to their advantage so they can propel their personal financial life forward and into bigger, better things. Because once you can handle a credit card, then you can handle things like a HELOC, home equity line of credit, and you get like, 250K thousand like lines of credit, and it's amazing. You can start making the bank's money work for you so you don't have to work as hard.
Yeah. And that's the dream, right? Your money's not working for you, then you're working too hard.
Exactly. And with how the times are these days, like our 9 to 5s is not enough income. We need to utilize the banks and credit smart and help our income out.
Yeah. And be careful of payday loans. Oh, so many people get into trouble with those.
Yeah, those are really high interest too.
Yeah.
Like ridiculous fees that it's not even worth it.
Nope. At all.
But yeah, I mean, I love credit, and if anybody watching it and listening is ever interested in learning more, then reach out to me and I would be happy to dive into it more and get you on the right track.
And that is sexy.
Oh yeah. Well, thanks everybody.
So next week, I want to talk about net worth versus liquid worth, and why a lot of people think that billionaires can just shell out all kinds of money and why they really can't.
Oh yeah.